Ben took a bite of his burrito, studying me in that quiet, knowing way of his. Well, if that fiancé of yours doesn't appreciate you, that's on him. I'll say it again, he's a fool. Any man would be lucky to have a woman who can fix a car before breakfast and still bake pies in the evening. The mention of Jake's name, though Ben hadn't said it, made something twist in my chest. I forced a smile. We're not talking about him, remember? Let's just drink our coffee. Ben held up his hands in surrender, and for a few minutes we sat on overturned buckets sipping coffee, pretending life was simple. But it wasn't. Not since that night a few weeks ago, when 2 pink lines appeared on a little plastic stick and everything inside me changed. Not since the moment I realized Jake was no longer answering his phone. And especially not since that gnawing fear crept in, that he wasn't coming back at all. I shook my head, pulling the zipper on my hoodie up higher. Nobody at work could know. Armin, the owner, was strict and unforgiving. One hint that I was pregnant and he'd find some excuse to fire me. And I couldn't lose this job, not now. I had bills to pay, savings to build, and a baby coming whether I was ready or not. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the garage speakers, jolting me back. Amber, you're up next. Client downtown, 20 minutes. I tossed the coffee cup and climbed into my cab. Ben called after me. Take it easy out there. And hey, eat something more than coffee today, will you? I gave him a small wave, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. As the engine roared to life beneath my hands, I whispered to the silent passenger no one else could see. It's just you and me, kid, we're going to make it. And I pulled out of the garage, straight into a day I couldn't yet know would change everything. The hum of the cab faded as I drove toward my first pickup, but my mind wasn't on traffic or street signs. It drifted back to how I ended up here, alone, pregnant, and trying to hold everything together with a smile that fooled no one. I wasn't always like this. I grew up in Fort Collins, a small town where people knew each other's dogs by name and waved even if they'd never met you. My mom died when I was 5, kidney failure, sudden and cruel, and I never knew my dad. After the funeral, it was just me and my grandpa, Hank Bennett. He was a quiet man with hands scarred from years of farm work and a heart big enough to hold all my pain in his too. Grandpa taught me things most girls didn't learn. I could change a tire before I could drive and rebuild an old Chevy's carburetor by 16. He used to say, "You take care of your own wheels, kid, and no one can tell you where you can or can't go." I loved that. Maybe that's why I left town the day after high school, because I believed I could go anywhere. Denver was loud and fast, but I found a cheap room in an old boarding house and landed a job at a diner. I hated the smell of fried grease clinging to my clothes, but it paid rent, and back then that was enough. That's where I met Jake Miller. He came in every day at noon, always with the same order: black coffee and a turkey sandwich. At first, I thought he was shy, barely looking up when I took his order. But over time, I noticed the way his eyes lingered a second too long, the way he smiled like I was the only reason he'd stopped by at all. One day, he brought a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite, though I'd never told him, and asked me out. I said yes without hesitation. Looking back, maybe that was the first mistake, but it felt like something good was finally happening. Jake wasn't rich, but he was charming. He said all the right things, how he admired how hard I worked, how he loved that I was independent. Within months, he was helping with rent, and eventually he moved in. I thought it was love, real, lasting love. When I found out I was pregnant, I was nervous but happy. I pictured Jake smiling, pulling me into his arms, saying we'd figure it out together. Instead, he froze. "You're sure?" he said, like I'd told him I'd stolen someone's car instead of carrying his child. I laughed nervously, brushing it off. "Of course I'm sure. Jake, this is our baby. We need to talk about—" He cut me off with a shake of his head. "Amber, we're not ready for this. It's too soon. I thought you were taking care of it, birth control." That night, he barely spoke. And the next morning, he didn't kiss me goodbye. Days went by with no word, and every call went to voicemail. I tried to believe he was just scared. That's what people say, right? Men panic and then come around. But deep down, I felt the chill of something breaking. I just didn't know how bad it was going to get. Sometimes, as I drive these city streets, I still hear Grandpa's voice. Take care of your own wheels, kid. He didn't mean just cars, he meant life. And now life was telling me I was about to go it alone. The first time I saw Jake again, it wasn't at home. It wasn't him walking through the door with an apology or flowers, or even an excuse. It was outside a downtown boutique, 3 days later, with her. Vanessa Brooks. She was the kind of woman you see on magazine covers. Perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect everything. Jake had his arm around her waist, and they were laughing like they hadn't a care in the world. For a second, I froze, standing there like some ghost of a life they'd already forgotten. Then Jake saw me. His eyes widened, his arms stiffened, and for a moment, I thought he'd come running, explain everything, beg me to forgive him. Instead, he stepped in front of her like I was some threat. Amber, what are you doing here? His voice was sharp, defensive. I heard myself say it before I could stop. I'm pregnant, Jake. With your child. We need to talk. Vanessa gave a laugh so soft and cruel it burned. Pregnant? With his child? She looked me up and down like I was some stray dog that had wandered into her world. Sweetheart, you need to move on. Jake has. Jake flinched, but didn't contradict her. Instead, he muttered, Amber, we've talked about this. No, we didn't. You ran. You didn't pick up your phone, Jake. You left me wondering if you were lying in a ditch or if you just didn't care. My voice cracked, and I hated it. Vanessa crossed her arms, glaring. Look, whatever this is, it's over. He's with me now. So why don't you take care of your little problem and stop embarrassing yourself? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words hung in the air like poison. Jake actually stepped closer to her, not me. She's right, Amber. We're not in a place for this. You should do what's best. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Those words sliced through me deeper than anything. This was the man I'd trusted with my heart, my home, my future. And now he was standing there, with his new prize on his arm, telling me to erase the one thing I had left of the life we'd shared. My hand moved before I thought. The crack of my palm against his cheek echoed louder than I expected. You coward, I whispered. You don't deserve to be anyone's father. Vanessa gasped and stepped forward, but Jake held her back, his face red with anger, or maybe shame. Just go home, Amber. This is over. Whatever fantasy you have, it's done. I stumbled away, my stomach tight, tears stinging my eyes. I don't even remember how I got home that night. I just remember collapsing onto the bathroom floor, hugging my knees, rocking like a child. I thought about calling a clinic. I even picked up the phone once. But then I pressed my hand to my belly and whispered, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't lose you too. For days I barely ate. I didn't go to work. My savings, what little I had, started draining fast. And the loneliness. It was like drowning in open water, reaching for something solid and finding only air. One night, as I sat staring at my phone, Ben knocked on my door. Amber, you okay? I opened the door, mascara streaked and eyes swollen. Ben's face softened instantly. Oh, hell. Come on. Sit. Tell me what happened. And I did. For the first time, I told someone the whole truth. Ben and his wife, Carla, listened quietly, then Carla squeezed my hand. Honey, don't let that man define your life. You're stronger than this. We'll help. That night, something cracked, but not in a bad way. It was the sound of something breaking open, so light could finally get in. The morning after I poured my heart out to Ben and Carla, I woke up feeling different. Still hurt, still raw, but not broken. Carla left a plate of warm pancakes outside my door with a note. You've got this. It made me cry all over again, but in a good way. People did care. Just maybe not the person I'd thought would. That night, over dinner at their place, Ben said, Amber, you ever think about driving a cab? We're short on drivers at the company. Armin, the owner, can be a pain, but the pay's steady. You'd be good at it. You know cars better than half the guys there. At first, I laughed. Me? Driving strangers around all day? Ben, I can barely hold myself together. He shrugged. Maybe that's what you need. Something to keep you moving. And hey, you already know how to fix an engine. That's half the battle. It sounded crazy, but the next morning I was standing in a cramped office while Armin looked me over like I was some risky investment. He was short, stocky, with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. You ever driven for hire before? No, sir, I said, keeping my hoodie zipped high. He grunted. You got a license, no accidents, no DUIs? Yes, sir. He stared a moment longer, then shoved a stack of papers toward me. Fine. You start tomorrow. Don't be late, don't waste fuel. And don't think I won't know if you take the long way for a bigger fare. There are cameras in every car. I see everything. I nodded, biting back the urge to say something snarky. The truth was I needed this job, and I wasn't about to let some grumpy boss scare me away. The first week was rough, long hours, heavy luggage, passengers who treated me like furniture. But there were good moments too. An old lady who tipped me with a bag of homemade cookies, a businessman who quietly said, "Thanks for getting me home safe," after a brutal day. Most of all, it kept me busy. No time to sit and think about Jake, no time to cry myself to sleep. Just me, the road, and the little life growing quietly inside me. I kept my pregnancy hidden under loose hoodies and oversized jackets. Some days I felt sick, but I pushed through because every mile, every tip, every dollar I saved was one step closer to being ready when the baby came. And slowly, something strange happened. I started to feel proud. Like maybe I wasn't just surviving, I was building something new. One evening, Ben caught me in the garage, wiping down the cab. "You're smiling," he said, surprised. I smirked. "Guess I am." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Good. Keep it up. You deserve it." At that moment, I didn't know my life was about to take another sharp turn, one I could never have predicted. It was supposed to be an easy shift. A long-haul fare out past the city, good miles, good money. Exactly the kind of trip I needed. I was even humming to myself, thinking about baby names as I drove. But when I pulled up to the massive house that had requested the ride, I immediately knew something was wrong. Music thumped from inside, loud enough to rattle the windows. A couple of men in expensive suits stumbled out onto the porch, laughing too hard, drinks in hand. My client was nowhere to be seen. A few minutes later, a man I assumed was the host staggered out, waving dismissively. "Forget it," he slurred. "He's not going anywhere tonight." And just like that, my fare was canceled. Frustrated, I called Armin to explain. His voice crackled over the speaker. "So, that's your problem, not mine. Get back to the garage, and don't even think about billing me for wasted time." He hung up before I could respond. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles went white. It wasn't my fault, but it was still going to cost me. I turned the cab around and headed back toward the city, rain now spitting against the windshield. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was an animal in the road, a shadow stumbling out of the tree line, half collapsing onto the shoulder. I slowed, heart pounding. When I got closer, I realized it was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, but filthy, clothes torn and smeared with dried blood. I hesitated. Picking up strangers in the middle of nowhere at night was a great way to end up on the evening news. But I couldn't just leave him there. I pulled over, rolled down the window. "Hey, you okay? Do you need help?" He tried to speak, lips cracked and trembling. "Please help me." And then he collapsed right onto the wet asphalt. Damn it! I jumped out, tugged his arm over my shoulder. He was heavy, and my belly ached with the effort, but somehow I got him into the back seat. On instinct, I sped straight to the nearest hospital, talking to him the whole way like that would keep him conscious. "Stay with me, okay? We're almost there. My name's Amber. You're going to be fine." He mumbled one word, "Liam," before slipping out cold again. At the ER, the nurses whisked him away. I stayed long enough to give my statement, even paid for the intake because he had no wallet, no ID. I told myself it was the right thing to do. But as I walked back to my cab, soaked and shivering, I wondered what kind of trouble I'd just stepped into. When I got back to the garage, Armin was waiting, arms crossed. "You think this is a charity?" he barked. "Cameras show you picked up some random bum. You cost me fuel and time." "He was bleeding," I snapped. "He could have died." Armin sneered. "And now you are paying for his hospital bill? Great. Consider your bonus gone." I bit my tongue and walked away. I'd done the right thing, so why did it feel like everything was about to get so much worse? The next morning, I woke to a pounding at my door. For a second, I thought it might be Armin coming to chew me out again. But when I opened it, 3 men stood there. 2 were clearly bodyguards, big, stiff, hands clasped in front. The 3rd man looked like he had just stepped out of a country club. Tailored suit, gold cufflinks, a watch worth more than my entire apartment. "You're Amber Bennett?" His voice was smooth, practiced, almost too calm. "Yes," I said slowly, one hand instinctively brushing my stomach beneath my hoodie. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You saved my son last night. Liam Carter. I'm very grateful." He stepped forward, placed a thick envelope on my counter without asking to come in. A small token of appreciation. I looked at it, but didn't touch it. "He's okay. Recovering. Nothing for you to worry about." His eyes flicked over me like I was a piece of furniture. "You didn't hear anything unusual from him, did you? Sometimes trauma makes people say strange things." That set off every alarm bell in my head. "No," I lied automatically. "He barely spoke." "Good. Then let's keep it that way." He smiled again, too perfect, too cold, and walked out, bodyguards trailing him. The moment they were gone, I stared at the envelope. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside was more cash than I'd seen in one place in my life. It didn't feel like gratitude, it felt like hush money. I couldn't shake it. Why would a father show no emotion about his son being found half dead on a roadside? Why did he care so much about what Liam might have said? I grabbed my keys and headed back to the hospital. When I asked about Liam, the nurse at the desk frowned. "He's not taking visitors." "Can you just tell him Amber's here?" Her expression softened. "I'm sorry, but he's in a medically induced coma now." "What?" "He was talking yesterday." The nurse shrugged helplessly. "Orders from above. His father is with him." As I walked away, stunned, a soft voice called from behind, "Wait, you're the driver, right?" A young nurse stepped forward, glancing nervously around. Her badge read Grace Moore. "Yeah. Why?" She motioned for me to follow her into a small supply room. Once the door was shut, she whispered he's not in a coma. They're sedating him. Heavy drugs, constant drips. Someone doesn't want him awake. I stared at her. "Why?" "He's their family." Grace shook her head. "That man who claims to be his father? He paid off our chief of medicine. I heard him say, 'Keep him under until I say otherwise.' That's not medical care, that's something else." My mind raced. What had I stumbled into? Grace touched my arm. "You saved his life, Amber. If you want to keep it saved, you need to get him out of here." I backed up a step. "I'm pregnant. I can't get involved in something dangerous." She nodded sadly. "I get it. But if we don't do something soon, Liam may never wake up. And whatever he knows, someone's willing to pay to keep it buried." That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Liam's cracked voice saying, "Please help me." I'd already risked my job to save him once. Could I really walk away now? By dawn, I had my answer. 2 days later, I stood outside the hospital's rear entrance, heart hammering against my ribs, so hard it felt like it might bruise. Grace had agreed to help, even though she could lose her job, her whole career, for this. "You're sure you want to do this?" she whispered, glancing up and down the empty alley. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "He'll die in there if we don't." She nodded, adjusting the white nurse's cap on my head and handing me a surgical mask. Just act like you belong. Inside, the halls were quiet, dimmed for night shift. Grace led me through a side door to Liam's room. He was still hooked up to the drip, pale and unnaturally still. Without a word, she turned the 4-valve off and removed the line. It'll take a bit for him to wake fully, but we need to move now. Together, we got him onto a gurney, wheeling him down the hall. Every squeak of the wheels made my stomach tighten. My hoodie stretched tight over my belly, a constant reminder that I wasn't just risking myself. We reached the back exit, loaded Liam into my cab, and Grace shoved a small paper bag into my hands. Antibiotics, pain meds, electrolyte packs. Instructions are inside. Take him somewhere safe. Grace, thank you. She gave a sad smile. Just keep him alive, okay? Then she disappeared back inside. The drive felt endless. Liam stirred once or twice, mumbling, but didn't wake until I'd carried him, half dragging, half supporting, into my tiny apartment. He blinked, disoriented, eyes scanning the room. Where am I? Safe, I said, settling him onto the couch. You're safe now. He tried to sit up, but winced, clutching his ribs. You saved me. Twice. I sat across from him, arms folded. You want to tell me why someone's paying doctors to keep you asleep? His jaw clenched. Gregory Carter. He's not my father, legally yes, but blood? No. He married my mom when I was 3, after my real dad died. Mom trusted him, and he ran everything until she passed too. He took a breath, eyes darkening. My real father left me a controlling interest in his hotel chain. I don't get access until my 25th birthday. That's next week. Gregory wants it all for himself. He hired people to scare me, maybe worse, so I'd sign it over. When I refused, they took me. I stared at him, stunned. That's who I talked to this morning. He called you his son. Liam gave a bitter laugh. He calls me son when it's convenient. Otherwise, I'm just an obstacle. For a moment, the room was silent except for the soft hum of the heater. I looked at him, this half-broken man I barely knew, and felt something shift inside me. I had come here to start over, to build a life from scratch. And here was someone whose life was being stolen in plain sight. You're not going back there, I said firmly. Not while I'm breathing. A faint smile touched his lips. You don't even know me. I shrugged. I know what it's like to be thrown away like you don't matter. I'm not letting that happen to you. For the first time in weeks, I saw something in his eyes besides pain. Hope. He whispered, "Thank you, Amber." I nodded. Rest. Tomorrow we figure out our next move. As he closed his eyes, I pressed a hand to my belly. We're in this together now, little one, I whispered. Like it or not, we just became part of something bigger. The next morning, Liam was sitting up on my couch, pale but steady. He had one arm wrapped around his ribs, but his eyes were sharp, focused. Amber, I can't keep running, he said quietly. Gregory won't stop unless someone makes him. I handed him a cup of tea. Then we stop him. Tell me everything. For the next hour, he laid it all out. The inheritance, the forged documents Gregory had tried to trick him into signing, and the threats that turned into a full-blown kidnapping. He even told me about the coma they'd forced on him. When he finished, I asked the one question that had been in my head since I picked him up off that road. You ready to fight this? His jaw tightened. Yes, I'm done being afraid. I drove him straight to the district attorney's office. Walking in with a man who still had bandages on his face and bruises on his neck drew a lot of attention, but Liam didn't care. He told them everything on record under oath. The DA listened, eyes narrowing as Liam described the hospital bribe and how Gregory had been controlling his life since childhood. They promised to act, but I could tell Liam was skeptical. So was I. People like Gregory didn't just go down because you asked nicely. That night, detectives met us at my apartment. They had questions for me, too, about the night I found him, and about Gregory's mysterious gratitude visit, an envelope full of cash. I told them everything. The investigation moved fast, faster than I expected. By the end of the week, Gregory was in handcuffs, shouting at the cameras as they shoved him into a cruiser. He looked straight at me across the parking lot and hissed, "This isn't over, girl. You ruined everything." For the first time, I didn't flinch. I just stared back, hand resting protectively over my belly, and said, "You did that all by yourself." Liam's case dominated the news for days. His father's death years ago, the suspicious financial moves, the kidnapping, all of it came out. Gregory's power crumbled like dry paper, and with it, the threats against Liam disappeared. When it was over, Liam was free to take control of his inheritance and his life. But when he showed up at my apartment, holding a modest bouquet and looking suddenly shy, I knew money wasn't what mattered to him. "You saved me," he said simply. "And not just my life. You saved everything I thought I'd lost." For a moment, I couldn't speak. No one had ever said something like that to me. He smiled softly. "Amber, I want to be part of this. Your life. Your baby's life. If you'll let me." I felt tears prick my eyes, but for the first time, they weren't from sadness. "We'll see," I whispered, smiling back. "One step at a time." That night, I sat by my window, watching snow begin to fall on Denver streets. For the first time in months, I felt something I'd thought was gone forever: hope. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges. In the weeks after Gregory's arrest, life slowed into something almost gentle. I still drove my taxi when I could, but Liam insisted on helping in any way possible, paying for groceries, taking me to prenatal appointments, even fixing up a second-hand crib he found online. At first, I resisted. "You don't owe me anything, Liam," I said one evening as he tightened the last bolt on the crib. He looked up, eyes steady. "Amber, this isn't about owing. It's about wanting to be here." And he was. Every day. We didn't talk about what we were exactly. Friends? Partners? Something more? But every time he smiled when he felt the baby kick, or every time he stayed up late assembling baby clothes I'd bought at thrift shops, my walls cracked just a little more. When labor came, it was the middle of the night, sharp and sudden. I panicked, of course I did. But Liam was calm, steady as ever. "You're okay. Breathe, Amber. I'm right here." Hours later, as dawn painted the hospital windows pink, I held my son for the first time. Noah Bennett. Perfect, tiny, warm mind. Tears blurred my vision as I kissed his forehead. Liam stood beside the bed, eyes shining. "He's beautiful," he whispered. "Amber, you're incredible." In that fragile, glowing moment, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't alone anymore. Days later, as I sat in the hospital bed, Noah sleeping in my arms, Liam walked in with something small in his hand. A ring. Simple, understated, but beautiful. "Amber," he said quietly, "I know life has thrown both of us into chaos. I know you're scared to trust again, but I love you. I love Noah. I want to build a life with you, if you'll have me." For a heartbeat, I couldn't speak. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but this time they carried no pain, only relief and joy. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, Liam." He kissed my forehead and wrapped his arms around both me and Noah. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt whole. The weeks that followed weren't some fairy tale perfection. There were sleepless nights, colic, and moments when I doubted everything. But Liam never wavered. He changed diapers, warmed bottles, and soothed Noah back to sleep at 3 a.m. Sometimes I'd wake to find him just watching Noah, a soft smile on his face, whispering promises only a father could make. And slowly I healed, not just from Jake's betrayal, but from all the guilt and loneliness I'd carried for months. I stopped thinking about what I'd lost and started loving what I had. A partner who chose me every day, and a child who gave me a reason to keep moving forward. One quiet evening, as Noah dozed in his bassinet, Liam sat next to me on the couch. "You ever think," he said, "that maybe we had to go through all that pain to end up right here?" I looked at him, at our son, and smiled. Yeah, I do. 3 years passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Noah was now a bright, curious toddler who never walked when he could run, never spoke when he could shout with excitement. Our little house on the edge of Denver was full of laughter. Toys scattered like confetti, and a kind of chaos I once thought I'd never survive. I'd traded my full-time taxi job for part-time shifts and focused more on being home. Liam had taken over the family business, but he refused to become the kind of man Gregory had been. People before profits, he'd say with a grin, and he meant it. His kindness reshaped the company, and his loyalty reshaped me. One chilly autumn morning, I walked Noah to the park. He clutched my hand with his tiny fingers and pointed excitedly at every falling leaf. Liam caught up to us with coffee in one hand and Noah's favorite toy car in the other. We were just an ordinary family, and for someone who had once cried alone on a bathroom floor, that ordinariness felt like a miracle. A week later, something happened that closed the last door on my old life. We were booking a family trip at a travel agency downtown. As we walked in, I froze for a moment. Behind the desk was Jake Miller. For a heartbeat, he didn't recognize me. I wasn't the same woman he'd left. Hair pulled back, hoodie zipped up, eyes swollen from crying. I was different now. Confident, calm, holding my son's hand, wearing a ring that told the world I was loved and chosen. His face went pale. Amber. I smiled politely. Hello, Jake. His eyes flicked to Noah and then to Liam, who stepped protectively closer. Is he? Jake stammered. No, I said gently but firmly. This is Noah Bennett Carter. And this, I squeezed Liam's hand, is my husband. Jake's mouth opened like he wanted to say something else, but I didn't give him the chance. We should go, honey, I said to Liam, turning away. As we stepped out into the crisp air, Liam glanced at me. You okay? I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Yeah, actually, I am. We went home, booked our trip online instead, and spent that evening making hot cocoa while Noah built towers out of blocks at our feet. That night, I sat on the back porch watching Liam and Noah chase fireflies under the fading sunset. And I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who felt so small, so discarded. She had believed her life was over because someone she trusted had thrown her aside. But she was wrong. That pain had pushed her to find her own strength, to keep a baby she once thought she couldn't handle, to save a stranger who turned out to be the love of her life. I whispered to myself, thank you, Jake, for leaving. Because if you hadn't, I'd never have found all of this. Liam came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. What are you thinking about? Just how lucky we are, I said, leaning into him. Noah ran up, holding out his hands. Mama, Daddy, look. I caught one. Inside his cupped palms was a tiny glowing firefly, delicate and beautiful. Liam crouched down. That's amazing, buddy. Want to let it go together? Noah nodded, and the three of us opened our hands, watching the little light float into the night sky. I smiled through tears I didn't even realize had fallen. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and it was full of love. I had once believed happiness was for other people luckier or stronger than me. But standing there with Liam's arms around me and Noah giggling at our feet, I finally understood. Happiness isn't something you're given. It's something you choose to build, piece by piece, moment by moment. And I wouldn't trade this life for anything.